Okay, so to finish off your tapestry, once you're all done weaving, I prefer to tuck in my ends while it's still on the loom. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my shed, and I'm going to just pull my weaving up towards the center so that I have an even amount of yarn on the top and the bottom. So this is what I mean by you're going to basically smush everything together in the end. As you see me moving up the stitches, you can see like you can basically fill in your spaces with your hands. You know, if you notice when you're making your angles that you have a little gap, you can just go ahead and push that up. No big deal. It's a very easy, low pressure project. Okay, so now this is close enough to centered. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over so you guys can see how you start to tuck in your ends, okay? So you just turn over your tapestry, and as you can see, it's not as pretty on the back as it is in the front, but that's just a bit of a sign of character. Okay, so you're going to take any of those little tails that you have, and you can just start tucking them where they fit. Now I'm going to randomly basically just tuck these in wherever there's space. Okay, now this one I tucked here. Once that's pretty stable, I'm gonna just go ahead and trim. Now these are already in the back, and this is from me running out of yarn in the middle of a stitch. And I'm just gonna tie these two together. Tie them together and just gonna go ahead and trim. Now you can just sort of get under your little stitch there and kind of pull it through so that's more sturdy. You don't have to worry about that popping out later. I'm going to do the same with this one. Just going to kind of go under a few of my threads and just pull it through. If you've ever crocheted, it's similar to when you are pulling a stitch through while you're crocheting, but just a little different. So it's similar. You can kind of approach it in that way. Okay, so yeah, like I said, it's a bit like either knitting or crocheting where you're just pulling the thread through. Well, this is a little awkward at this angle with my right-handedness, so excuse me. This one's gonna be a little bit slow. There we go. Okay. And don't worry if it doesn't look pretty on the back, because it's not gonna show through the front, so you don't have to worry about that at all. And now on this part right here, because this was an end of a row, I'm going to make sure that I pull it over and not let it slip through the warp thread. So just be aware of that on your weaving, not to mess up your rows while you're tucking in. Okay, okay, here's an example of wanting to be careful on your ends. Now this one ended up a little bit orphaned over here, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it through my warp to make sure that the weave retains its integrity. Okay, there we go. So now I'm just gonna tuck that in. Uh-oh. And then I'm just going to tie these ones together to cut a little bit of work out there. And trim. Alright, and there you have it. That's how you... Oh, I didn't show you how to tuck in the trim. Okay, so this one is really simple because it's so big. Basically all you do is weave it backwards into your weaving and pull it tight. You don't even have to trim it because this one is stiff. You don't have to trim at all. You can just stick it in there and it should hold its place. And you can do this with any trim. You can add personal trinkets. You can add like a lock of your kid's hair. I don't know, whatever rocks your boat, just to personalize it. Okay, so here we go. Here's how it looks on the front. It's much cleaner now that those ends are tucked in. Oh, looks like I forgot to trim one. Alrighty, so it's much cleaner now. And I'm gonna show you how to start removing this from your loom. Now this part can be a little tricky, but don't panic. As long as you left a couple of inches, as I suggested in the beginning, you should be fine. Okay, so to start, I'm gonna go ahead and move this down a bit so you can see. Is that okay? All right, so to start, you're gonna just start trimming your warp threads. Now don't trim them all at once because that can be a little hard to control. So I'm gonna trim 2 at a time, and then once that's trimmed, I'm gonna go ahead and tie it together. Now because of the weave I did here, I'm gonna tie these together and then I'm gonna tie these together. So trim 2, tie those together, and I'm gonna take the 2 sections that I just created and tie those together as well. And that'll ensure that your weave stays in place. So you just continue that along the width of your loom, being very careful now because it can get a little bit tricky if your warp thread falls through your weaving. You're just gonna have to wind it back through. And it's doable, so don't panic if it happens. As long as you have a little bit of space, you should be good to go. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the bottom side. What you're gonna do is just turn your loom around, and you're gonna wanna make sure that your weave is pulled down, not super tight, but just where there's nothing really bulging out of place. And then you're gonna take your tassels and just flip them over so they're out of your working way. Now, so the same process, you're gonna clip 2, whoops, clip 2 and tie them. And actually on this one, since I did start this with the basic weave, which is the 1-1 weave, you can trim 4 at a time if you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to do that. You just take these 2 and these 2, and you're gonna just tie them together. Just be careful not to tie too tight because it'll start pinching your weave in. Okay, and then you're gonna just continue that across your loom, and once it's cut all off, I'll show you how to tuck those in. Okay, so now I've tied everything off, and so it's completely off of my loom now. And as you can see, the tassels need to be trimmed, which I would do after hanging. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you first how you tuck in your warp threads. Now this part can be a little bit time consuming, but if you tied it tight enough, what you can do is just go ahead and trim them. You don't even have to tuck them, but I would suggest only trimming them if you have double tied them into a knot. I'm gonna go ahead and show you close up. So as you can see, that's a pretty sturdy tie right there. And so I'm gonna just trim those off to save time. Okay, so to attach it to your stick of choice, I'm gonna go ahead and use a regular fat needle, just because it's easier for me. You can do it with your hands, it's absolutely possible, but I'm a little bit clumsy, so I'm gonna go ahead and use this needle. So you just tie your yarn to your needle, and you're gonna go ahead and stitch around the back. You can stitch it to your warp thread, or you can stitch it to the top part of your yarn. So I'm just gonna go ahead and loop it through there, a little bit of both just to keep it sturdy, and just go ahead and pull it through. And then you can tie it right here to keep it attached. And just loop it around your stick and then go right back in. So as you can see, the yarn is going over the stick, and I'm going to go ahead, oops, I'm going to go ahead and stitch right behind there. You can pull it as tight as you want. Some people prefer to leave a bit of yarn hanging off like that, but I like it close, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull it tight and just continue. And just go back through. And I'll turn this around so you can see. You can see it's all sewn in there. I'm just gonna go ahead and create a bit of a knot just to keep it in place. Whoops. Okay. And then I'm gonna trim that off, just like that. Alrighty, so now it's on your stick. Okay, so I'm gonna use the Memory hardware chain to go ahead and hang my tapestry. And I'm just gonna tie this to the end here, because I like the idea of having a little something hanging there. I might even add some tassels in the end. Uh-oh. Messed that up a bit. Let's try that again. Okay. So I'm just going to tie that there in a knot. Now when you get ready to hang these, just make sure that your length of your whatever hanging piece that you choose to use, you can use rope, you could use yarn, you can use whatever you want, but I'm going to use this chain. So I'm going to make sure that this chain is pretty long, because if you make it too short, it can start to pull your tapestry in as it's hanging. So just make sure you give it a lot of length there to keep your tapestry displayed nice and straight. Okay, and there you have it. You have a nice little tapestry. I suggest trimming your edges while it's hanging, because that makes it easier for you to see the way that it's laying. But I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little trim up right here. I think I'm going to give it a nice little angle. To match the angle of the actual weaving. Where it comes to a point, I'm going to try to keep a point there. And then I'll just clean it up later. Okay, so we're getting a bit of the beginning of the shape there. And then you're going to just continue on up. I'd be careful when you're trimming your tapestry, because this is like the last step, and I know if you're a dedicated weaver like me, you're probably going to sit and do a whole project in one sitting, which honestly doesn't take long, but you know, your attention can slip, so just be careful when you're trimming it, because you don't want to have to do your tassels all over again. So this is the general idea. When I hang it up, I'm going to go ahead and clean it up, but that's the basic idea. Really fun, really cute, easy tapestry. And it's bright and fun. Enjoy! Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy Prima Fiber Arts loom kits as much as I do. Look for them in your local craft store soon. I hope to see you next time while we go over more awesome techniques and show you more process shots and DIYs that you can do with the loom kit. Thanks again. Happy weaving!